Welcome to Sinful's Horror Stories. If you're new to the channel, please be sure to subscribe now for quality horror narrations on YouTube. Please hit the thumbs up button and make sure to hit the bell so you're notified of my new weekly uploads. Comment below and introduce yourself, and I'll be sure to respond. If you want to be featured on an upcoming video, email me at my email in the description box below. And please be sure to leave a like on this video, as it will recommend it to so many more people and greatly help my channel. Sit back, relax, enjoy, and stay sinful. Mrs. Thomas's Pet Shop of Horrors. For reference, I'm female who was in Mrs. Thomas's preschool class when the story occurred in the early 1980s. The school was in a church just outside of the Pittsburgh area. We had a gerbil in the class as a pet and mascot named Herbie. Our duties as a class were to watch, care for it, and learn more about rodents. One day during a class break, I went to check in on Herbie and noticed that his little neck was outstretched and hind legs were shuffling in the cedar chips because he was having difficulty reaching his water basin. You know, the clear cylinder filled with water, they could just suck the water out of the silver straw attached. He was clearly trying to reach his water source. I simply then did what I still would do now, gently squeeze on the water basin until I see little water droplets coming out. To my relief, Herbie was lapping up the water at his own pace. The next thing I know, Mrs. Thomas yanks me out of the classroom by my arm, takes me to the sink where we washed our hands and cleaned our paintbrushes. This was in the hallway directly across from the classroom, slightly to the right, and she literally places a stepping stool up to the sink. Again, I was only 4, and so small that I couldn't even reach the sink on my own. She proceeds to turn on the water, plug it up, and fill the sink while demanding I step up to it. This sick child abuser was making her own spectacle out of this. She then pushes me slightly forward by the nape of my neck over a sink that is 3/4 full, accusing me of trying to drown the gerbil and yelling at me, "How would you feel if you were drowning?" I was so terrified I couldn't make a sound. Tears were streaming down my face. I will never forget turning my head to the left and seeing 3 of my classmates, 2 boys and a girl. They were peeking their heads out of the doorway, watching an absolute horror. I was never submersed in the water, but the mental damage was done. Once she finally released me, I was pulled aside into the bathroom and was then threatened that if I told my parents or anyone about this, I would be in a lot of trouble and would never see my friends at school again. The 3 students never asked me about it, and as far as I know, nothing was ever said. Fast forward to Christmas break in the 4th grade. We had since moved out of state and were at the airport flying back to Pennsylvania to visit for family Christmas. To this day, I truly will never know how or why the memory was triggered, but before we boarded that plane, I felt guilty about hiding the incident to my parents and broke down into tears. I told my mom and dad everything about that day. We arrived at my grandparents' home late in the evening, caught up on some very good cookies and milk, then hit the sack. When I awoke the next morning, my aunts were already there to get me ready and to take me shopping at the coveted Monroe Mall. After a few moments upon waking up, I asked everyone where my mom and dad were. "Oh, they had to run a special errand today and will meet us for lunch at the mall." This is probably the part I should mention that my mom's side was definitely an old-school Irish-Italian family. Looking back as a parent myself, it all makes sense. The role my parents had to play of calmness and comforting when I told them about the incident, yet the look in their eyes of absolute horror and rage towards this teacher. My mother volunteered in the classroom, knew and trusted this teacher. Some years later in my early teens, I asked my mom where they went that day. She claimed they went to school to ask about the teacher and report what I had told them. They were told that Mrs. Thomas passed away from cancer. That's all I remember, as my mother has passed some time ago, and my father is in his 80s, and I see no reason to remind him of this awful memory while living out his golden years. Things are very different 40-plus years later in schools with lawsuits. No more corporal disciplining and cameras now all over the classrooms and halls. Thankfully, I truly believe no teacher would ever get away with something like that now. I also believe it's truly a miracle how our brains can repress an incident so traumatic until we can actually process things and recall the details. What happened to me as a preschooler should happen to no child ever. Mrs. Thomas, I do hope you ask for forgiveness before your passing, and we're truly sorry for what you did. Something tells me I'm not the only child you abused, as I remember you being an older teacher at the time with lots of opportunities over the years. Perhaps it was cancer that did you in, or perhaps my family plumbing business took matters into their own hands. I've been working from home for about 2 years. 3 weeks ago, I was asked to come into the office, and yesterday was my first day back working at home. We have one of those doorbell cameras, but it broke down. Since I'm home all the time, we haven't gotten around to fix it or replace it. We haven't taken it down either. I don't have a gate or anything in my house. It's just the driveway, then the door. I have a clear view of my driveway and front door from my bedroom window. At around 1 p.m., there was a knock at the door. I looked out my window and saw a man. He had a dark brown hoodie and jeans. He didn't look like he was expecting someone to open the door. He also pressed the non-working doorbell multiple times. It seemed like he was paying more attention to the street, looking around nervously. When someone knocks at my door and I don't know them, I will not answer the door. I just stay quiet until they leave. But this time I got a weird feeling, like I had a heavy rock in my stomach and alarms going off in my head. I yelled, "Coming." He suddenly stood straight up and looked around some more, waited a few seconds and walked away in a hurry. I looked at him until he disappeared out of my view. This was one of the moments that your instincts kick in, and deep down you know something bad may have happened and can't stop thinking about it. This morning my nosy neighbor, we all have that one neighbor, came by to tell me the week's gossip. It was my day off, so I was sweeping my driveway. Someone had broken into one house yesterday. Nothing was stolen, but the shower had been used. The kitchen was messy from someone cooking. The bed was unmade and all the TVs were left on. The horror was the family pet had been killed. Don't have full details on that. I don't live in a nice neighborhood. A lot of my neighbors have cameras and alarm systems for this reason. I couldn't stop thinking about this guy that knocked. According to some neighbors, they saw this weird guy around the block, supposedly selling some cleaning products and supplies, but he only carried a clipboard with him. I went to my neighbors that live across the street from me. I know they have cameras and I was hoping maybe they caught something. So for 3 days this guy had been knocking on my door at the same time every day. I guess his MO was to make sure no one was home and then break in. What would have happened if I stayed quietly like I normally do when someone unknown knocks at my door? He would have probably come in with me in the house. God, it creeps me out. When I was walking back to my house, my doorbell caught my attention. It was full of some gunky, sticky stuff, like someone attempted to cover the camera. Guess I should definitely replace that. There's talk of some neighbors having video evidence. Others say they actually saw the guy. It's all still going on. I'm sure I'll know more about it in the next few days. I'm feeling very anxious, thinking of going on a trip to visit my family just to get away for a bit. I don't live in the US, so the way police handle matters here is much differently. I've spent a lot of time in the woods in the dark. It is a thrilling, unique feeling. There were some strange and scary moments, and this one is one of the worst. Before I start the story, let me ask you this. Would you do the following if you had the chance? Me and my friends were night walking on a track surrounded by forest and cornfields. In the distance, we heard some voices and saw some phone lights. It was 3 people that were coming closer to us. Well, we had plenty of time to prepare, to put ourselves in the cornfields, which we did. As soon as they passed us, we made the corn move heavily, so it made a lot of noise. Another guy made some noises. The people then returned where they came from. Now for the real story. This time it was me and my best friend having a nightly adventure in another nature region. In the distance we heard a group of people having a gathering. We couldn't see them as there was also a steep hill in between. Now we contemplated about doing the old scare thing, first some scouting of the area. We went up this steep hill, and on top of it. We still couldn't see the people in the distance, only hear them. There must have been 5 different voices speaking at the same time. Now to scout out other people, you need to be in complete darkness and silence, which we did. While we are on top of this hill, which is completely covered in bush, we hear some rustling coming from below, slowly but surely closer to us. The owner of the sounds tried his best to be sneaky and slow, but in complete silence you hear every detail. There were also little branches breaking under his feet. We could hear that he was alone. We are now sitting there between our bushes, haven't moved yet since we started noticing we were being stalked. Any second it would reach us now. We could really feel the presence. I made some hand gestures and we relocated as slow and as quiet as we could to the center of the hill. As we were progressing downwards, this thing or man still kept getting closer towards us. You know what? Fuck this. I now stood up and made myself bigger and ran fast to where the noise came from. I yelled to my buddy, "Find him!" For another 20 seconds we kick bushes and look around. Now we're not longer in hiding mode. We pause again to hear if we can find our opponent again, and we can't. After this we left the hill. We stay a bit further still in viewing distance of the hill. After several minutes, we heard and saw nothing. When I turned 14, I had a friend that was turning 13, and our parents surprised us by letting us get our ears pierced together. We had fun. We picked out an extra pair, and then we went to the food court. When we sat down, they went over the loudspeaker to say that the mall was closing in 5 minutes. We thought, okay, we just have to eat faster. Then 2 minutes later, a security guard told us that we should get going. We packed up and went towards the parking lot. My mom had left, so I was riding home with them. It turns out they had parked in the Macy's parking garage, and the Macy's locked their doors. There was another family there that was locked out as well. We both tried knocking on the door, but no one came. After 5 minutes, we decided to give up. Then this guy came up to us and said he knew a way to the parking garage. Both of our groups looked at each other and agreed to go together. He led us to this door around the corner, and we followed him down a long hallway. The hallway had white walls and wooden boards in random spots. It was kind of like an unfinished basement type aesthetic. Then before the turn, there was a doorway he decided to open, which led down to a stairwell. Someone from the other group held the door and we spread out down the stairs. I stayed a bit more towards the top because me being a true crime fan, I felt like something was off. It felt like a story in a podcast I had recently listened to. My friend's mom opened the door and there was just another hallway. We were officially freaked out when I noticed that the guy had ditched us. He literally disappeared. We sprinted up the stairs, and as we made it up the stairs, we could hear talking around the corner of the hallway, the corner we hadn't turned. The second we were out, we all walked towards a different exit together. We never saw the guy as we walked through the mall. It was almost like he had just disappeared into thin air. So learn from my experience. Never go down the back dark hallways. Who knows what would have happened? Would we have been lost in a maze? Was the guy planning something? Who were the other voices I heard? I'll never know. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Please be sure to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe for future videos. Email all of your true encounters to thesinfulsavant@gmail.com. The link to my email will be in the description box below as well. Until we meet again, stay sinful.